It just so happens that every time we type in fail in this search, we get a failure. And what we're seeing here right now is that there were no books found. We need to try another search. But what actually happened is we get a 500 from the server. Backend engineers are working on this. We have no idea what's going on, but we need to handle this. And it's nice that we have such an easy way to make failures happen. So if we take a look at this response object, let's go ahead and do that. We'll refactor this a little bit so I can console log that response. We'll save that. We'll try fail again. And now response has that status of 500. It also has OK of false. And that's how we know whether or not this failed. So the interesting thing about window.fetch is that it actually won't reject your promise unless the network request itself failed. So if talking to the server at all failed, then you'll get a rejection. But if that talking to the server was successful, then you don't get a rejection, even if the request itself was a non-200 status code. So we actually want our client to reject the promise if the response is not okay, and that's what we're going to handle in our API client. Now remember that response.json is an async call, so I'm going to turn this success handler function into an async function, and that way I can await this response.json, and that'll give me my data. Now I'm going to get data whether the request was successful or not, and I'm going to use that data for the success response or for the rejected promise. So here I'm going to determine whether it should resolve or reject based on response.ok. So if the response is okay, then we can simply return the data, and that leaves our promise in a resolved state. But if the response was not okay, then we're going to return a promise.reject version of the data, and that means that our promise will reject. So if I save that and come over here and then do fail, then we're going to see that we do indeed get a failure, and we are loading forever because we're not handling that failure on our page. So let's go ahead and handle that. Right here, we can add a second argument to this then to get our error data. And in here, we can set our status to error, so a new status here. And we also want to set our error to this error data. Well, to set the error, we of course need to manage that error state. So I'm going to add another use state here for the error, and we'll call this set error, and we'll initialize that to null. And then we'll add another status here for is error, status is error. And then right below the form here, I'm going to want to render. So we can say is error, oh no, otherwise null. So let's just give that a try here really quick. Fail. And we get oh no, perfect. Let's make this a little bit more useful. We'll say div, and inside of that div, we'll have a p tag that says there was an error, and we'll give what that error was inside of a pre-tag with error message. And then right here, just to make it more fun, we'll add the CSS with a color, and we'll use the colors danger. So we're going to need to bring our colors in for our app. So we'll import star as colors from styles colors. Great. So now let's try that again. We make a failed request. There it is. Looking super duper. It would be cool if this icon changes to an X or something to indicate what's going on even further. So I'm going to also import FA times, and then we'll come down here to where we're rendering that spinner, and we'll say if there is an error, then we'll render FA times. Otherwise, we can render that search. And then we'll add an ARIA label here for error and a CSS prop for color, colors, danger. Great, so let's try this one last time. Fail, and boom, we've got a nice error right there. We've got the error showing up here. Let's make sure that this actually can still succeed. Yep, things are looking awesome. So I'm feeling really good about the changes that we've made here. Let's go ahead and review them. So the first thing that we needed to do is update our API client to take that response.ok value and reject the promise if it's not okay. Otherwise, we return the data, and that's the same API that we exposed before. So then we added a error handler to our then call here. We set our error data and set our error status. We're managing that error data with useState, and then we derive our isError state from that status. Then we came down here and added some UI for the error state, and we also added some UI in our input for that icon for when there's an error there as well. And now our users have a much better experience when there's an error.